So the finale of Life is Strange has been and gone, and in this episode there weren't that many glitches, but I'll get onto that in a second. First off, there's no way to do a review of this final episode without giving heavy spoilers into the game, so if you plan on getting it, go buy it now before watching any further. As for the rest of you, enjoy the minor little glitch we had in this episode of where the code box sort of flew off the screen and wasn't available to see, but, you know, minor little thing. Anyway, in the finale, we had Max tied up in the dark room and drugged and captured by Jefferson. Now, in this episode, you spend the entire time trying to escape. A few different people have commented that maybe the escape scene disappeared too quickly, but that depends on how you're taking this final act, because there are subtexts that you might not notice. For example, when you escape to the perfect possible reality, where you're away in the art gallery enjoying the fact that your artwork has gone, Jefferson had drugged you at that point, so you went back into the room again, back into the past, back into the delusional state of being on the drugs and daydreaming and thinking everything's perfect, until you realise that Chloe's in Arcadia Bay because of the headaches and the storm in your head. Now again, Max is appearing inside the storm, so that's one thing to note. And then you're back in the dark room after you make the changes to try and save Chloe of ripping up the photo, and Max comments on, you know, why am I back in the dark room for ripping up that photo? Well, you know, it shouldn't have had that sort of influence, because if she had have affected the change, then she wouldn't have been there, would she? And again, there's the whole point. The next time that she escapes is when Jefferson again is at her neck with the injection, and suddenly, miraculously, she's being saved by David Marsden. But is this really what's happening, or is this a delusional state? Also, there's a scene where Max states, how did she know, or how did Jefferson know that she had ripped up her prize-winning photograph? If you know that back in episode 1, when she goes to the bathroom, she actually rips up this photograph. So in the original timeline and in any timeline, this has already happened. It's only by changing the history that she'd prevented it happening, I guess, by handing in her photo to Jefferson to win the competition before she ripped this. But this was always in a delusional state, in a delusional timeline, an altered timeline. So the fact is that the photograph was always ripped and always destined to be ripped. So that is how he already knew. But he then comments sometimes, how did she know certain things? But again, these could be during delusional states, so there's a grain of salt to be taken with how much she actually knows, depending on what's coming. But yeah, Dave Marsden comes to save her miraculously, but again, this could be a delusional state, and he does mention this will be the last monologue you ever hear of me, because obviously he knows that this is going to be one final overdose, and he has noted that he would rather it be Max than having been Rachel that should have overdosed and Max should have died, and all of this. So we have our brief escape scheme, somewhat more realistic and fit into the scene, where you can again save as many people as you can in Arcadia Bay, and again maybe lead to a perfect possible future depending on how you partake it. But you get to the diner, you go to Warren, you get the photo, you go back to avoid ever having been kidnapped by Jefferson. But again, after avoiding this, you still wake up in the dark room. You're not fully conscious though, this is more semi-conscious delusional state, you know, passing away sort of state, because the heavy dose things are far more effective, you know. You're having stronger influences over your visions, you're losing the grip on reality entirely, so that's why everything goes completely crazy. That's why you're back in a dark room hallucinating and seeing everyone interacting in certain ways, and Jefferson then, whilst you're still dying, perhaps he can hear you, so you end up back in the classroom again, but in like a really creepy, awful version of the classroom, with it noted that Max saying, I won't say that, because it's almost as though Jefferson is whispering in her ear and, you know, play rolling with Max perhaps while she is unconscious on the floor. Really dodgy, because obviously he's probably still photographing her, and oh yes, well my selfies are shit, or oh yeah, Chloe deserved to die, and all this, and it's like, no, I won't say that, but you know, he's obviously saying these things in her ear, and like before, saying how it's her fault that Kate was on the roof and how she's responsible for all of these things. So while you're running through the hallways of your mind, probably trying to find a way back to reality, and all this time Jefferson is whispering in your ear because you never left that dark room. She even comments on how the bindings she can still feel on her wrists, because she is still tied up in that. And you'll notice that sitting down is a common theme throughout the game, and that there are plenty of opportunities to sit down, and that even in the classroom at the beginning you're sat down because you're restrained in the chair. You never left the chair, you never escaped. Maybe you escaped in your mind. Again, I'll draw influences from media. There's, what is it, Vienna or something? I keep forgetting the name of it. It's some country or some town, but at the end of that there's a schism where he actually escapes, but then the very last scene is he got away from us, but he's in the chair, just gone insane. You know, he's escaped in his own brain, but really in reality he's brain dead, or you know, he's dead because they've screwed him up. And How I Live Now, there's a point in that where her delusions are more colourful, and obviously she's escaped to try and find her former boyfriend, who's most likely dead, but they're running low on water, and then there's this possibly poisoned water in front of them, and they drink that and fall unconscious. But then they wake up in the happy cheery world with the colour palette of her delusions, and suddenly everything's alright, when you know in reality for the rest of the film, actually, no, it's not alright. And I get the same feeling for this. It's, although you've escaped, you've not really escaped, because with how crazy everything goes, you just know that that's Max's last things. She has her last happy memories of her and Chloe. She's avoiding the lights, which is what you never do, because the lights, I know it's common perception that the light is passing on, but it's not. The light, everyone who's seen the light and gone into the light have always been the ones that woke up. The light is reality. The light is the bit of life that you've got to cling on to. And you're running through the dark, avoiding people with flashlights. You're avoiding the light. Sure, you go into the lighthouse at the end of the tunnel, which is rather stupid for Max to think is safe, because in episode 1 she knows that the lighthouse collapses. She knows that she gets sucked up into the tornado from going to the lighthouse. The lighthouse is the least safe area she could possibly go. It is not safe. She should have just left Arcadia Bay entirely if she thinks that the storm's coming and anywhere she'd be safe. And even if you do go with the whole thing of maybe she's altered reality and created the storm, yes, that is sort of a thing that goes, especially with the endings, which, again, I don't really like the fact that it all boils down to one decision, and that one decision, regardless of what you do, kind of invalidates everything. You can either not save Arcadia Bay and just let everyone die, even the people that you might have just saved, you know, forget them, they're all dead, even Kate, which is the main thing, no, she's dead. Or you can go back and let Chloe die, and regardless of whether you save Kate and all that and everything, they're all saved, and you don't even get a proper end sequence. No talking, no resolution. You get the brief photos, but again, that goes on to the whole thing of, with her dying, you know, there's not much of a thought, so it's just a quick, endless thing. You know, quick passing, yeah, they were quickly photographed being taken, Nathan and Jefferson are being sorted, and then it's off to the funeral, where if you don't have the music, there's no sound, because they got rid of the ambient sounds and they got rid of anything, so it's just silence and kind of ruins the whole thing. And at the end of that, I noticed that it zooms on her face. What would be interesting is to go with the photography theme, if they'd have had a flashing light in her eyes and her putting up her hand to block it, because that also goes with the hand theme for the time travel, and just would have made a really fitting last scene. But no, it's just her smiling away, and with everything I just felt a bit disappointed with how it ended, especially like that, but it still fits with the passing on. And again, there's one more bit that seems to fit with the passing on. The scene in the diner, because it's a popular thing with death, is that there's the whole gathering before the end and confronting your own consciousness to decide which way you go. But also, I noticed that some of the voices in there weren't bad voices. Some of them were good. Like, for example, I rescued the trucker and he's like, you know, breaker, breaker, thanks for saving me, Max. And then the shy guy is like, you gave me more confidence. So I wonder if there's a truly perfect possible ending where if you help absolutely everyone in the most perfect way, all of the voices are possibly good, and perhaps it provides you with the opportunity to then escape from Jefferson and actually escape. This also means that there's an unlikely event that there's going to be a Life is Strange Season 2, because with the way this just ends, you know, if it is time travel and if it does cause the schism that causes the storm, you already know this, and, you know, you're not going to want to use the power, and where do you go, you know? You've already established that if you change anything, you're going to destroy the whole universe, and that's also why you can't then go off with saving Chloe forever, because she's destined to die, they've established. Especially with Alyssa and having to constantly save Alyssa, you know that you're constantly going to have to save Chloe because her fate is determined. That's always going to happen. No matter what you do, you're going to constantly do it and create even more natural disasters the more you alter time. So it was never a choice to save Arcadia Bay or Chloe, because you'd always have to save Chloe, and then you'd just destroy the entire universe by doing so. And then if you go through the whole you've been kidnapped route, maybe you could establish something through that, you know, maybe you begin at the start of Season 2 already knowing that you've been kidnapped, whoever you are, and you're then trying to go back through your memories because you don't know who's kidnapped you or how you've got there, and you're trying to establish the facts through your own delusional dream states and changing time through that, you know, just to rewind and remember and figure out what's going on, and then maybe possibly escape or die as the alternate endings, depending on how you figured it out or what you've learnt. So that could be an interesting way of doing a Season 2, but it's also the only way through the established timeline that would ever make any sort of sense. So yeah, check out Life is Strange for yourself. Was fun to play and interesting and moving, but just the way they dealt with some of the ending, and especially not having a proper fitting ending, you know, giving a satisfying conclusion to Jefferson going to jail and talking through all the things and having a proper ending, just doesn't really fit. But it might if Max had died, and, you know, there's not time for that, and she's passing on, and it's just a wisp of eternity and no voices and nothing as she passes on. Life is Strange. Check it out for yourself. Goodbye.